Good for everyone. Rabbi Gesundheit began the Farbrengen this afternoon that this Shabbos is coming as a continuation to Beis Nissen, 2 days in the month of Nissen, which was yesterday, which marks the Hilula Yoltzeit of the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe's father. And at the same time that it is the Yoltzeit of the Rebbe Rashab, it is also the day when the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, accepted leadership to become a Rebbe, because as soon as his father passed away, automatically the leadership was taken over by his son, by the Frierdiker Rebbe. The inyan of the Yoltzeit of the Rebbe Rashab is of special significance this year, because this year we are entering the 70th year of his Petir, of his passing away. And Bechlal, when we're talking about Rabbeim, each one of the Rabbeim has special inyanim, which they have accomplished, which they have achieved. And if we're looking amongst the special inyanim, which the Rebbe Rashab achieved, it's the idea, the concept, and he was the one that founded the Yeshiva Tomchei Tmimim. The Yeshiva Tomchei Tmimim, which unites the learning of Nigla and the learning of Chassidus all together, which this is something new which was introduced by the Rebbe Rashab. Though before the founding of the yeshiva, there was also an inyan of Yungalite and Bacharim that were sitting and learning. They were learning Nigla, they were learning Chassidus. But nonetheless, it was not in this organized way, in this organized fashion, as it started once Tomchei Tmimim began to learn Nigla and Chassidus on a permanent basis, on a daily basis, which is actually something new in a yeshiva which was introduced by the previous Rebbe's father, by the Rebbe Rashab. And this is something which affects those that learned in Tomchei Tmimim, and even though those that did not learn in Tomchei Tmimim, because of reasons that were not up to their hands, it was not within their power at the time, but nonetheless they received influence from those that have learned in Tomchei Tmimim, and this has affected them and has affected them in all inyanim of Nigla and inyanim of Chassidus, and as well as spreading Chassidus and spreading Yiddishkeit until the Chol D'Rochecha De'eyu and Kol Ma'asecha L'Shem Shamayim, which means even the Gashmias of a Yid also has to be permeated with Yiddishkeit and permeated with Chassidus, and all this was affected by the concept of Tomchei Tmimim. Memela, now that it is the Hiluli Yoltzeit of the Rebbe Rashab, and especially we're entering the 70th year of his Yoltzeit, it is appropriate that everybody that has a shaychus to Tomchei Tmimim, again, whether they themselves learned there, they were influenced through those that have learned there, and now that we're talking Tomchei Tmimim, it doesn't necessarily mean institutions that carry the direct name of Tomchei Tmimim. There are those institutions that carry the name Achei Tmimim, or Moises that do not even have this title at all of Tomchei Tmimim, or the word of Tomchei Tmimim. But the main thing that they are following this concept, Chassidische, in other words, Moises where Nigla and Chassidus is learned, and they are following this concept. So everyone that has a shaykhs to any of these inyanim, now is an opportune time to make a proper evaluation and to increase in all of these inyanim, and all of these inyanim should be increased mitoich simcha. And especially, says the Rebbe further, that we are in the month of Nissen, and we are already into Nissen. Today is the 3rd day of Nissen. And what is the inyan of Nissen? The inyan of Nissen is, the Gemara tells us, Nissen has 2 nuns in it. And therefore the Gemara says, if one sees the word Nissen in his dream, he should anticipate Nisei Nissim, an abundance of Nissim, an abundance of miracles. As we will hear soon later in the second Sikha, where the Rebbe referred to this in detail. Mamela, now that we are in this opportune time of the month of Nissen, so it's a suitable time that all the meniyos v'yikuvim, all those things that seem like interference and obstacles for strengthening the spreading of Yiddishkeit and the spreading of Chassidus, all these inyanim will be dissolved. And the truth is that they are really not interferences. Truth is, it is only an esoyin, it is only a test. But especially now that we are in this opportune time of Nissen, this will also fall away. These nisyonos and these demyonos, these things that seem to be interferences, will all fall aside, and especially that this year is a special year. The Rebbe again mentioned it's 40 years since the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we all know what the number 40 means. 40 is a call for Arboim Shnin. Once 40 years pass, It's an opportune time for koyim adaite de Rabbi. The Rebbe quotes the psukim which Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden after they were 40 years after receiving the Torah. And after going out of Mitzrayim, then Moshe Rabbeinu turned to Klal Yisrael and tells them, now, in other words, now, after 40 years, it is Nasan Hashem Lachem, the Rebbe has given you Leiv Ladas, a heart to understand, V'nayim Lirais, and eyes to see, Vaznayim Lishmaya, and ears to hear. In other words, based on this pasuk, the Gemara derives that it is after 40 years, one really gets into the in-depth theory of what his Rav has told him 40 years earlier. Memela, now that we are 40 years after the passing of the Friedrich Rebbe, and especially this year is a year of Shnas Tashmei, Tovshin Mem Tes, is Shnas Tashmei Yodecha. What does Tashmei mean? That means that all the debts that we owe are being taken care of. That's what Tashmei means. When one has a chayv, when one has a debt, and the debt is being taken care of, that's called Tashmei. Incidentally, that's the union of Shemitah. Shemitah, we are not allowed to collect any debts. Same word, Tashmeit. Shomet. Shomet kol ba'al masha yodoi. So therefore, it's again another source of strength that this is a special year where the Rebishter looks away and gives up on all debts which we owe him. So therefore, Rabbi says this is an opportune time that Yehi Ratzeh may it be the will that we should not have to talk anymore about inyanim that are undesirable inyanim. All we should be able to talk about is about increasing, being meisif, and all these increases will lead to the Geula. And especially that we are coming, and Nisan comes after Adar, and Adar is Purim. So it means that all of this has to be done. All of this has to be done amidst of Simcha. So we have just had Adar. Adar is the month of Simcha. From this month of Simcha, we have entered into Nisan. Then the Rebbe continued in the second Sikha. The first Sikha was relatively a small Sikha. The Farbrengen was a short Farbrengen. The Rebbe continued in the second Sikha. It's customary that every union should be related to an union of mindset, to an union of action and deed. And being that we are already less than 30 days closer to Pesach, the Gemara tells us that 30 days before a Yontif, one is supposed to begin to prepare for the Yontif. Another opinion in Gemara is not 30 days, but 15 days. Now, according to both opinions, we are already in the time when we are to prepare for Yontif. And Mela, first thing we have to know that being that we are in the days of preparation for Yontif, and Avos Yisrael is something which supersedes everything, V'ahavta l'reyacha kamoicha, and Kol Yisrael arevin zeh lazeh, all Yidden carry a responsibility one for another. So in Mela, it's the opportune time again to urge everyone to make sure that all Yidden have the means that they can celebrate Pesach accordingly and properly. And talking on this quotation in Gemara, Kol Yisrael arevin zeh lazeh, all Yidden are responsible, Orev Meloshin responsibility, one Yid for another. The Rebbe mentioned there are other taichen in this. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. Arevim is Meloshin Taruvis, Meloshin mixture. All Yidden are mixed in together. All Yidden are united together. And this in itself comes with a Yetifer taich. Orev is Meloshin sweetness. Orev Masuk means sweet. Rabbi brings a type that when Yidden are united, when Yidden are together, one brings sweetness to another. One adds ziskait. One adds sweetness to another Yid. That's the Indian of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. Simple meaning of it is, as we just touched, all Yidden are responsible one for another. But again, this responsibility, why is one Yid responsible one for another? Because there's a shaykhus between the Yidden. Memela, this shaykhus is the unity which is to prevail amongst Yidden. Memela, when there is this unity is in existence and Yidden are mixed one with another, then one adds ziskai to another, one adds sweetness to another. And again, the Rebbe is going back to the fact that we are in the month of Nisan. And the month of Nisan reflects the concept of Nisei Nisim, an abundance of miracles. And here the Rebbe came out very strongly. What is the heroia, what is the lesson which we can derive from the fact that we are now in the month of Nisan? Bechlal, a Yid serves the Rebishter with all his strength. However, with all his strength, as it is in accordance to Teva in the realm of nature. And one can say that he's already done everything. He's done everything that is within his power to serve the Rebishter, and he can come to a conclusion that he's already satisfied and he is already accomplished, and there is no more for him to do. Comes the month of Nisan and stresses that there is no such thing. A Yid can never say that he has done already all that is within his power, and Genuk, he cannot do any more. Nisan reminds us, Nisan calls from us that there's a concept of Nisei Nisim. In other words, how much a Yid has done in the realm of nature, there's always room for him to go more and above that, and he will do above the realm of nature. He will serve the Rebishter in the realm of Nisei Nisim, in the realm of an abundance of miracles, an abundance of Nisim. And just like when we're talking in Teva, in the realm of nature, there are various levels and a person can keep on going higher and higher. Once he has achieved the highest level in Teva, then we come to a yet higher Madrege. We go into the level of Neis and we serve the Rebishter above the limitations of nature, and that's how we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One is going to ask, the Gemara tells us, Ein soimchen al haneis. We do not rely on miracles. So if we do not rely on miracles, how are we demanding here to serve the Rebishter in a format of Nisim, in a format of Nisim? So the Rebbe says this was Amol. This was the olden times. Now that we are in the days of Ikvesed Mashiach, we are expecting Mashiach, and the mere fact that we are holding out in Golus to such an extent, this in itself is a nest. This in itself is an outstanding miracle. Memela now, on the contrary, it has to be soimchin ala neis. And here the Rebbe teach soimchin is simple meaning, when we're meaning that in this expression in Gemara, the Gemara is referring to soimich miloshin rely, when one relies on a miracle. So the Rebbe brings the expression of smicha. We find it in the Beis Hamikdash. When a Yid brought a korban, there was a need for smicha, for samach yodoi. We find many times in the psukim of korbanos. The halacha is that when one had to, it means to lean on the behemoth which was brought as a korban. The halacha is that this smicha has to be done b'chol koichoi, with all the strength that the person has. In other words, has to lean on the behemoth with all the strength that he has. Now when we're talking about this inyan of soimchen alanes, so the Rebbe is applying this expression that it has to be soimchen. We have to dwell into it with all the strength, with all the koiches that we have. And all this is done as a preparation to the coming of Mashiach. To reveal that, the Rebbe always mentions, what's the inyan of Golus and Geula? Golus and Geula are really the same letters. The same letters we have in Golus, the same letters we have in Geula. The only thing is, there's an Aleph in Geula which is not in Golus. What is the Aleph? The Aleph is the Alufi Shalaylam, the Rabbeinu Shalaylam. What is our whole Aveda in Golus? Our whole Aveda in Golus is to reveal the Alufi Shalaylam. And once this is accomplished, then it is no longer Golus, then it becomes Geula. And once Mashiach will come, once we will be in the level of Geula, then the pasuk of Atem Tiyuli, Mamleches Koyanim, the Goy Kadosh, that all Yidden are considered a kingdom of Koyanim and a holy nation, this will be seen in its fullest extent. What is the inyan of a Koyan? The inyan of a Koyan is he serves the Rebishter. He serves his master. He's a servant to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Memela, there's an expression in Gemara, Eved Melech Melech. The one who is a servant to a king is also part of a king. And therefore, being that, what is the inyan of a melech? A melech is peiretz geder. A melech opens all boundaries and all limitations. Now, if we're talking about Yidden in the level of being a mamleches koyanim, all being avodim, servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we are getting the same koiches that the melech has, and we are now preparing ourselves to come to such a madrege. So memele, the avodah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu now has to be in the same contents as to what we are heading. And what are we heading to become a mamleches koyanim v'goy kodesh? Memele, the serving that must din in the meibishten, and also in a way of above all types of limitations, just like Melech, Peretz Geder, the same we have to serve the Rebishter. In other words, the Rebbe is constantly reiterating this concept, kept on stressing it throughout the Sikha, how the month of Nisan calls and demands from a Yid to serve the Rebishter above the realm of nature. Nisei Nisim. And then it will be fulfilled what we're reading about in this Sedra. This Sedra begins, Isha ki Tazria v'yoldo zocha. So we know what's brought out in Svarim, who's considered an Isha Knesset Yisrael. Yidden. Am Yisrael is considered Isha. Because Am Yisrael is in the madrega of a recipient, receiving from whom? Receiving from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when Yidden are in this madrega, they are fruit-bearing, v'yolda, they're giving birth. And they're giving birth to what? V'yolda zocha. That's how the pasuk goes on. Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zocha. What is the inyan of a zocha? What's the chiluk of zocha and a keva? So Chazal tell us zocha is a ish darkei lichboish. It's the nature of a man to go ahead and conquer and take over. And Mele, same idea. The Avodah of Yidden will be in such a way that it will be in a way of Ish Darkei Lichboish, above the realm of nature, and this will be in everything that is done and achieved will remain eternal. The Rebbe again continued that being that every Yid is a Ben Avraham Yitzchak v'Yankov, and every Yid is a member of this Goy Kodesh, of this holy nation, was Bechlal, this nation is L'mayla Mederech HaTev, and our existence throughout all the years was above the realm of nature. So Mamela Yid has to, Rebbe was using the expression, a Yid has to call out, a Yid has to announce that his attitude will be in a way of above the realm of nature. And again, in L'mayla Ma'ateva, above the realm of nature, there's also levels upon levels. So Mamela, he will never satisfy himself and always keep on going higher and higher. What's the inyan of Teva? Teva is the Taich. Let me use the expression, Teva is a keep on using the expression Nes and Teva. What's the inyan of Teva? Teva is a normal anhage. When we see things in the normal, routine way, everything is run by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Teva, the Rebishter has set up, and Nes, the Rebishter has set up. But what is the difference? Teva is the routine things that happen daily and constantly. But again, Teva was also set by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is Nes? Nes is above Teva. So the Rebbe says what's going to happen is that the Nes, the Avodah of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, above the realm of nature, serving the HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the format of Nisei Nisim, this will become Teva. This will become the daily routine Avodah. Even though, Alter Rebbe brings out in Tanya, that when something becomes a teva of a person, once he has practiced it and done it many times, as Alter Rebbe brings the Gemara that the person has to do something 101 times that it should become part of his nature. So here we are saying, even though it was not done 101 times, but still once a person is into it, fully into it, and he realizes that he has to serve the Rebishter in a format of above Teva, L'mayla min HaTeva, so this becomes his Teva, his nature, that's how he serves the HaKadosh Baruch. And here again the Rebbe says, we are before Yontif, and before Yontif it's appropriate to remind about giving more ischitim. If this is something which we have to take care of, we have to make sure that all Yidden have the means to be able to celebrate Pesach properly. Naturally, there is a halacha, Aniyei Ircha Kaidmin, the poor people of your own city. Them we have to give priority. But at the same time, we have to know that we have to take care of the needs of the poor. And when we're talking about providing the needs of the poor, there is poor in Gashmias and there is poor in Ruchnias. Mo uses the expression "Ein oni ela bedas." Poverty doesn't only mean economically, financially. A person may be very well established financially, and at the same time he's considered an oni. He's considered poor. Poor in what sense? Bedas. In knowledge of Yiddishkeit. So again, this is an opportune time to see to it that those who are in need of Gashmistic assistance, and as well as those who are in need of Ruchnistic assistance, that all these inyanim are taken care of. The Rebbe says, taken care of in a way of Nisei Nisim. In other words, again, above nature. Naturally, there's an inyan of giving tzedakah. Al pi halach is enough if one gives maisa. If one wants to give more than maisa, then he could give a fifth, he could give 20%. But when we're talking here about giving giving for Kimcha de Pischa, which means for Mois Chitim, and helping out for Pesach, and reaching out to making sure that every Yid should be able to celebrate Pesach accordingly, a format of Nisei Nisim and a format of L'mayla Mederech HaTeva, then it goes even above the Chaimish, above the 20% as well, as long as to make sure that every Yid can celebrate Pesach accordingly. The Rebbe kept on expressing himself that this is what a Yid has to go around and schrei and scream, that this is what he's into. And at the same time to stress that what he's schreieing about today, what he's screaming about today, is not the same level that he schreied yesterday. Because if we are demanding that how a person has to keep on going higher and higher in the realm of Nisei Nisim, in the realm of above Teva, it has to keep on going higher, higher, and yet higher. Even though we find in Gemara that when one has a miracle, he is supposed to make a bracha. There's a special bracha which we make on a nest. There's an inyan of birchas anisim. Nonetheless, when one becomes used to the inyan of nes, and this becomes his derech and avodah, then there's no making a bracha on it. A bracha you make when it comes out of the usual, out of the ordinary. However, when it's his routine avodah is in the format of nes, and the nes becomes his teva, this is his way of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the inyan what Chodesh Nisan adds in our avodas Hashem. Rebbe continued that there's another inyan which is Hazman Groma, which is suitable to the time to talk about, and that's about the Minig Yisrael. It's a Minig Yisrael that every day, beginning from the month of Nisan, we say the Nasi of the Shevet that has brought a kolm in the Mishkan on that given day when the Mishkan was dedicated. The Mishkan was dedicated Be'echad bin Nisan. So, for the first 12 days, and then on the 13th day, we also say the special passion of the Torah. It's customary to say the Nasi of the kolm of the Shevet that brought the kolm on that day. Rebbe says there are those that have an attitude that this is not something so important. Because the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it in the Siddur, and Memela they feel it's something which is not something which we have to be careful of. And even in the Siddurim where it is mentioned, it's mentioned in the back, not where the important in Yanemar. It's, a Siddur has to contain everything. So a Siddur contains also the Kriyas HaTorah, so it has the Kriyas HaTorah, what we read on Rosh Chodesh, and it has the Kriyas HaTorah that we read in the Torah on Chanukah. So next to the Kriyas HaTorah that we read on Chanukah, there's in small letters, and many Siddurim it's in Rashi letters that can barely be seen. It's also added that it's appropriate that during the month of Nisan, we should say the Nasi daily. So they feel that this is something which we could take a very easy attitude towards. So the Rebbe says it is not so. It's an inyan of a Minig Yisrael, and every Minig Yisrael is something which is very dear and precious, to such an extent that it's brought out in Svarim. It's brought out in Chassidus regarding Hakofes and Simchas Torah. Hakofes and Simchas Torah is only a Minig. It's a custom. It's not mentioned. It's not a Deraisa, and it's not even a Darabonon. But it's an inyan which is a Minig Yisrael. And at the same time we see how dear and precious it is to Yidden. You see how Yidden rejoice, come Simchas Torah, and put in all their koiches into it. Why? Because this shows the koich, the strength of a Minig. A Minig Yisrael is something which is very dear. And an inyan which is Midarabanan is very dear. The expression goes, Chamurem alai divrei soifrim, and arevim alai divrei soifrim. Anything which is given on midivrei soifrim, which means the Chachomim has added on, it's, at times we are more machmir in that than in the Reise, and it's very pleasant in Yonim of Arevim alai divrei soifrim. And maybe it's something which we should not look at it easy. On the contrary, we should not think it's something which we should underestimate it. It's something which is of extreme significance, and something we should be careful about, to make sure that we say the Nasi daily. Today is Gimel Nisan, 3 days in the month of Nisan. Takif, earlier when the Rebbe was talking about the whole lineage of Nisei Nisim, the Rebbe says especially today, we are already 3 days into Nisan. 3 is a significant number. It's the inyan of Chazokah. It's already established that we are into Nisan. Regarding the Nasi, today's Nasi is the Nasi of Zvulun. Shevet Zvul. We know that there's kind of a partnership between Yisachar and Zvul. Yisachar's inyan is Torah, and Zvul was the one that he was involved in business. L'choif Yamim Yishkoin, he had the ports and the boats, and out of his profits he would also support Yisachar so that Yisachar should be able to sit and learn. Rabbi says, but really if we go deeper, there's a combination of Yisachar and Zvul in every Yid. Every Yid has within him the Yisachar part. In other words, the part of him that every Yid is mechuyev to be kavei itam l'Torah, and everybody's obligated to learn whenever possible. And at the same time, every Yid has within him the Zavul, where he's supporting learning the Torah, and he's helping out people that they should be able to learn Torah. The tzedakah that one gives. Rabbi says, if we go into it a little more into detail, the inyan of Yisachar, which is the pure learning of Torah, this inyan of learning Torah, in the pure sense of learning Torah Lishma, this is something which the real Torah Lishma will be when Mashiach will come. However, this does not mean that we should not learn now. What does the Gemara say? La'olam yilmid adam shaloi lishma. A person should always learn, even not for the sake of learning Torah. He may have other reasons why he's learning Torah. Shemei toich shaloi lishma, ba lishma. Now he's learning shaloi lishma, not for the sake of learning Torah. He's learning. He has other intentions, but as long as he's learning Torah, and this will lead that ultimately he will learn Torah lishma as well. Let me use here an expression: Torah b'taharosa. Torah in its purity. In other words, learn Torah for the sake of learning Torah without any other side reasons, without any other intentions. This is incidentally an expression which the Rebbe the last couple of months has been using, the Rebbe various inyanim. Initially it began, the Rebbe was using this expression of tzedakah b'taharosa, when a person gives tzedakah without any other intentions. He gives for the pure sake of giving tzedakah, not seeking a reward, not anything. Now he's using the same expression when we're talking about Torah Lishma. He's learning Torah b'taharosa. But this is something which, real madrega of Torah Lishma, this is a madrega which we will be able to achieve and get to once Mashiach comes. However, the inyan of Zvulun, the Rebbe's teaching goes, what was Zvulun? Zvulun is a merchant. Zvulun is doing business. The whole inyan of Yeridas HaNeshama, of the Neshama coming down into this world, is also an inyan of a business. That's why the pasuk says, Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha. Zvulun, be happy. B'tzeisecha, when you are going out. Zvulun was going out into the ports to do the business, to be a merchant. The Rebbe's teaching in Ruchnias, every Yid is going through this inyan of Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha. Every Yid is in the madrega of Zvulun, and every Yid is being told that he should be sameach, he should be besimcha, b'tzeisecha, when his neshama is going out, when the neshama is going down onto this world, and the neshama is coming into this world. The neshama here is also coming for business. Just like when a person is in business, there's an expression in Gemara, Zovin v'zovin tagre ikre. If one buys and sells for the same price, could we call him a merchant? He's not called a merchant. If you buy something for $100 and he sells something for $100, then he's not a merchant. You have to buy for a price and sell for more. That's the whole inyan of business. Memela, the same thing. The neshama coming down into this world and doing what type of a business? The neshama is coming here for the Rebishter's business. The Rebbe says we're talking about business, but this is a business which we're allowed to talk about on Shabbos. Shabbos we don't talk about business, but this type of business, the Meibishter's business, we're allowed to talk about on Shabbos as well. And it's for this business that the neshama is coming down into this world. And what is the neshama's goal in this world? The neshama is trying to achieve that the Reshus Harabim, the public place, as we mentioned many times, why is it called public? Because it has room for everyone, should be converted and the neshama accomplishes by coming down into this world, that the entire world becomes a private reshus. Private for whom? For Yechidei Sheloilo, for the Yochid, for the singular. Who is the Yochid? The one and only for the Rabbeinu Sheloilo. And it is for this business that the neshama is coming down into this world. The neshama is coming down to fulfill the Rebishter's business, to make sure that the neshama's trip to this world, and the neshama is being involved in business, turns out to be successful. In other words, that the neshama gains and comes to a level, to a much higher one than the neshama was at before the neshama came down into this world, because that's the whole meaning of making the trip. Otherwise, it's a worthless trip. If the neshama would remain at the same level, then it's like we mentioned earlier, zovin v'zovin tagrik, then he's not called a merchant, he's not called a businessman. But when the neshama achieves much higher madregas than it had earlier before it came down into this world, this is the whole union of zvulm, which each and every one goes through, which each and every yid goes through by his neshama coming down into this world. At the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe said, everybody should again meant for the coming of Mashiach, everybody together saying Ad Mosai, how much longer will we be in Galus? And then the Rebbe asked to sing the nigun of Sheyabana Beis Hamikdash, for this Beis Hamikdash which is already standing complete and erected Lamaila, but all that it's missing is that this Beis Hamikdash has to come down here into this world, and when this Beis Hamikdash will come down here into this world, that will be the Geula Shleima. And then it's always customary that the Rebbe always reminds that we should make a bracha achreina towards the end of the Farbrengen. The Rebbe said today that we should make a bracha achreina, and at the same time we should also reach the madrege that we can make a bracha achreina on the Golus, that the Golus is Golus should finish, and the coming of Mashiach should be b'meher v'yameinu. The Rebbe again said to sing a freilich Sheyabana Beis Hamikdash, and together with it also to sing a Simchas Torah nigun, a freilich nigun, and they began the famous nigun of Simchas Torah, to which the Rebbe got up, and the Rebbe made very strongly with his hand. And it is through Simcha that it will lead to the coming of Mashiach.
If you had a dream or something during, but
he sees the word nissim in his dream. Nissim.
It's not just the fact that we're into Pesach like any other Pesach. It's mamish a new zone, right?
The way the Rebbe is talking is.
It's a new time within the world, so to speak.
Yes, I mean, the Rebbe should come out so strongly. Again, the Yid has to announce and to proclaim that we are at a level of Nisim, and how much Nisim. In other words, to serve the Rebbe totally above the realm of nature, and whatever we have done till now, we will go higher and yet higher. And today's Nisim is not tomorrow's Nisim, and the day after. It's very different word.
Did you see Rebbe show the kids yesterday?
I heard about it.
One.
The kids told me.
That's very funny. Very funny.